Thank you guys all for coming to this session. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. We've obviously spent a lot of the festival so far hearing about austerity and about the effects of austerity, so I'm really excited to present you the panel of the people who are fighting back against austerity. I'm really excited to have everyone here today. Just to give you an introduction to everyone on the panel, my name's Ellie. I'm a council member, help on the festival here, and I've been involved in trade union organising in a number of sectors in places like call centres and so on. On the panel we've got here today, we've got, starting from there, Richard Allday, who's the Road Haulage Branch Secretary in Unite, and also sits on the National Executive and is a council member. We have Erkan Ersoy, who's the Senior Organiser in the London and Eastern region of Unite and is in the Leverage Department. Liam Bremont, who's London Transport Regional Executive in the RMT. Mags Dalton, who's shop steward for Unison and has been involved in the KUK dispute in Doncaster, which is an amazingly inspirational dispute, which I'm sure Mags will tell you more about. Sam Fairbairn, who's the National Secretary of the People's Assembly Against Austerity, and Alex Kenny, who's the NUT Branch Secretary of Tower Hamlets and also sits on the National Executive. So each of our speakers will have about 6 minutes to speak. I'll be quite strict with them. And we'll have then quite a lot of time for questions and contributions and discussion afterwards. So I won't cut in any more to their time. We'll start off with Sam Fairbairn.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ellie. Do I need to use the mic, or are people okay without? I do need to use it, okay. Fine. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. And I think it's quite an important meeting here today because we're meeting at a time when we're just on the brink, I think, of potentially some of the biggest wave of strike action, of protest and of resistance that we've seen for many, many years. If you look in the next 6 months, within 6 months, we're going to have two major national demonstrations, plus there's the potential for, sandwiched in between these two demonstrations, for some of the biggest coordinated strike action for many, many years. And it couldn't come soon enough, frankly, because austerity, according to the mainstream, according to the politicians anyway, isn't going away anytime soon. Cameron, at the end of last year, announced, speaking just down the road from here from a gold-plated podium, announced that he thinks that austerity needs to be permanent, regardless of the deficit or anything like that, but austerity should be a permanent feature in Britain. We're now faced with one of the biggest fall in living standards since records began, and that's according to an Office for National Statistics report. Real wages have fallen by up to 14% since 2009, affecting the most affected is the youngest in society, between 16 to 24. While at the same time as real wages have been falling, the richest in society have seen tax breaks. We've seen the gap between rich and poor widening for the last few years. One interesting statistic that Larry Elliott reported on in The Guardian a few days ago was that the richest 5 families in the UK are worth more than the bottom 20% of the population. Now that's 5 families that are worth more than 12.6 million people in Britain. And that's not even to mention the caps on social security, the bedroom tax that's forcing thousands of people out of their home, the massive housing crisis where 9 out of 10 new claims for housing benefit come from those in work but are on too low a wage to afford their rents, and obviously private landlords charging outrageous rents. Obviously, and of course, there's the privatisation of all of our public services, from the NHS to the Royal Mail. And it's important to state that obviously all 3 major parties still remain committed to austerity. So we're meeting at a time now when we're in the run-up to a general election. We've seen that UKIP got a surprisingly good vote in the Euro elections, and we need to develop a strategy for resistance, I think, more more than ever. And the question that one of the questions that I want to pose is, can this be done without the trade unions? And the very simple answer to that is absolutely not. 1 in 4 workers in Britain remain in a trade union. Trade unions are the biggest form of working class organisation and democracy, but also our ability to collectively withdraw our labour is the most powerful weapon that the working class has. But the second question that I want to pose really is, can this be done by the trade unions alone? And the answer to that is theoretically yes, but the situation that we're in now, probably not. And it's a slightly more complicated question, because it's no secret that since the late 70s, the trade union membership has been on the decline. This is following from the Thatcher smashing up the trade unions. Anti-union laws have made it incredibly difficult to organise in the workplace. You can't strike over political issues. And at the same time, Cameron, by the way, is attempting to attack the unions at any cost. At the moment, 2 minutes left. So, I mean, if you look at what's happened over the last few months, Cameron's attempt to launch an inquiry into trade union tactics, the attacks on, specifically on Unite around Falkirk, which actually was launched more or less by Miliband. But you can still see attacks on trade unions happening today. But although we've seen a kind of steady decline in trade union membership since the late 70s, the level of political radicalisation, the radicalisation over the big political issues, I think we've seen actually even an increase amongst the general population. If you look back over the last decade, there's been an increase in the new social movements. There's been a rise of big political movements on the streets. What's shaped the last decade, I think, in Britain has been the big, massive anti-war protests, the biggest demonstrations and protests that this country's ever seen. And if you look at the recent strike days by the NUT and by others, lots of the anger that's been directed, that's come out from the strike days has been on the streets. It's been the big strike day demonstrations where people are directing the anger towards the government and towards and around the big political issues. So I think it's no surprise that while lots of unions do continue to see a shrinking membership, but both Unite and the NUT have grown in the past couple of years, and I think that's because they've placed themselves at the heart of the anti-austerity movement. They've made the strikes and their campaigns around political issues, as well as the economic issues that they're facing in the workplaces. But at the same time, we also need to bring together all those people that aren't in the trade union. We need to bring together all of the pensioners. We need to bring together all the students. We need to bring together all of the disabled people, the precarious workers, all of these kinds of things, because austerity is obviously affecting absolutely every section of society. We need to bring those together with the unions. Doing this not only rebuilds the trade union movement, but it also creates the conditions that can lead to further action. And I think the big political street mobilisations can build the confidence in the workplace, in the workplaces. And we only have to look back, I think, at the anti-austerity movement, at the beginning of the anti-austerity movement. That was kicked off by the big student revolt in 2009, 2010. That led on to the TUC calling a national demonstration in London, which was the biggest demonstration that we've seen against austerity, which then led on to the biggest coordinated strike action over pensions in 2011. And I think you can, without that student revolt, without that national demonstration in London, we would not have seen big action in the workplace around that. So that's why I think really that the next few months are absolutely key in terms of fighting austerity coming up. And I'll just finish on this. It looks like the 10th of July could be set. It looks set to be one of the biggest days of coordinated strike action over pay for many years, at least since 2011, since the pensions dispute. And there's a potential for another big day in October. In October, the TUC have called a national demonstration on the 18th of October. And to kick it all off, the People's Assembly has called a national demonstration on the 21st of June, which has been mentioned and discussed throughout the event. But I think that demonstration is absolutely key. It will have a direct impact on the success of the strikes. It will have a direct impact on the confidence in the workplaces for people to take further action. So I think after today, really, my message really is go back. We've got 3 weeks now to make that demonstration absolutely massive. And it's not just about you coming on that demonstration. We need to think about how we got our neighbours on the demonstration, our workmates, our family, our friends, people on the street. We need to popularise the arguments, the anti-austerity arguments, and that means getting out on the streets, and that means us doing all we can in the next few weeks. So thanks.
Sam's psychic, because he wrapped up as soon as I started writing. Wrap up, please, Sam. So thank you very much. We were going to hear next from Erkan Soy.
Thank you very much. Hi everybody. I'll read the title of this session first. Then I'll try to answer some of the questions Sam has asked, and also some of the areas that I disagree with Sam. I'll go through while I'm explaining the areas why I disagree. The title is Militants and the Movement, Unions, and the People versus Austerity. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at it from different angles. I'm going to talk about Unite organizing model. So I'll cover issue-based campaigning, sector organizing, I'll talk about leverage, and also I will talk about strategy for a better world. So rather than just fighting against something, but fighting for something. So I'll be talking about those areas and how we can address the issues that we are facing in today's world. Unite organizing model is very simple one. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's basically issue-based organizing. We organize workers on everyday issues that they face in their workplace. This is quite obvious one, but during 2011 and 14, when we launched a 100% campaign, when I was training majority of our reps, I'm talking about 400 or 500 at least, I realized that many of our reps in workplaces actually moved away from issue-based organizing and went into servicing model. So this is quite key. I want to labor the point on issue-based organizing. Without organizing workers through their everyday issues that they face in workplace, we're not going to be able to build strong workplace organizations, strong unions, and therefore we won't be building strong movement with the strong militancy. So issue-based organizing in that respect is key. What we do, I'm talking about issues like it could be bullying, it could be lack of microwaves, it could be lack of protective equipment, those are basic things. So rather than going and representing individuals at an individual level, we collectivize workers around these issues. We take collective actions. We make sure that people participate in those collective actions. So when they win on those issues, they know that they achieve that through collective power. That builds confidence. That builds the mentality of union being us, rather than the third party outside or the I call them super rep or super officer coming and solving the issues for the workers. Now. And I'm hoping that we will be able to go into these areas during question and answer sessions as well. So I'm just going to keep that there. Sector organizing. Unite has got this model as well. We organize sector by sector. We don't just go and look at through our window and say, oh, there's a big factory there, let's organize that. We actually do a very detailed analysis of specific sector before we target. So we make sure that we target at least 70-75% of the companies covering 70-75% of that sector. So we make sure that we do that in a coordinated way in entire UK or, if possible, globally. Now, the reason behind sector organizing is very basic Marxist economics. Wage levels basically equalizes themselves at a sectoral level. So this equalization could be in the interest of workers if the workforce are organized and fighting, collectively within that sector, so they can push to wage and terms and conditions within that sector collectively together. If they're not organized, bosses will be attacking their terms and conditions in a coordinated way and pushing their wage levels and terms and conditions within that sector. So that's quite basic in that respect. That's also, we do this because when you organize these companies covering this specific sector, they compete with each other. So if you organize company A and push the terms and conditions, then the company B, who is not organized, will be able to undercut those particular company, and therefore, we will lose our membership there because the company will shut down, etc. So these are the basic things. I'm just looking at it, bloody hell, time goes really fast. So I'll just go into leverage. What is leverage? Leverage is essentially the effective implementation of strategic organizing plans. We've done this in sector organizing. We used leverage since 2005 as organizing and leverage department against supermarket within white meat and red meat sector. We were quite successful on that. The union density went up from 48% to 91% in white meat and 89% in red meat. So that's quite key and successful result that we had as a result of leverage campaign. But we also use leverage to defend our militant, outspoken leadership, the reps within those workplaces. If they are targeted, we made it very clear during Crossrail campaign that we will be there to defend our rank and file members. We also use leverage during the London bus dispute. Some of you followed that. Basically, this is to overcome the legal challenges. We were, when we balloted our members on strike, we were injuncted on really basic city grounds, but we made sure that we weren't gonna just walk away from this. So we actually, through the various collective actions we made, those where those garages were injuncted, we actually still had effective action in those areas. I'm just gonna jump into political strategy. Thank you. As you know, what we are doing currently, we are looking at critical infrastructure. We are talking about key infrastructure areas within the economy. This is energy, the logistics, so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that these key areas are extremely well organized so that we can coordinate in the near future economic strike and build the confidence of both the workforce and working class movements, and then also build the political consciousness. I'm going to cut there because I've been asked to wrap. I'm hoping that you guys will ask questions so that I can actually go into more details. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously I think that we'll have quite an in-depth discussion about it, and I hope that everyone on the panel will be able to come back and chip in on those things as well, just to make sure everyone gets a chance to contribute. And I'll pass on now to Leon Brumont.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey. Good afternoon. I'd first like to show gratitude to all those who chose to be here today. I relish the opportunity for discussions such as these. I really hope that we can, I can learn from you and everyone else here. We can all share and learn together, so that we can be inspired and go back to whatever areas we're in and kind of continue the spirit of effective resistance. So my name is Leon Brumont. I work for London Underground on the stations. I'm also a member of the RMT. I'm a passionate trade unionist, and just to clarify quickly, I'm on the regional executive committee. I am not the regional executive. That makes me sound a bit more important than I actually am. So as the subject matter, we've gone over militancy and the movement, unions, and people versus austerity. So firstly, I'd like to start with the word militancy. It's a bit of a dirty word. People kind of want to label us as a militant trade union. But why are we militant? Well, because we have a conflict. We have a class conflict going on. I think there's two major things that we need to do as trade unions. But first is to kind of reignite that debate of class conflict, because that's the underlying thing that will continue, and we'll always have an ongoing disputes because there's a class conflict. So the other important thing I think we need to do is organise grassroots organising. I think it's the key to victory. This means continuous organising in the workplace, nurturing and supporting activists and organisers who are lay members, so they have the connection with the workplaces, they're organising their peers. Just a simple thing of discussing issues. I always say while going around organising, every member can talk to their colleagues about the issues, keep it a live debate. So as many of you are aware, the subject matter is quite relevant to me because we are currently in dispute with London Underground, which is a direct result of austerity. The government has told TfL to cut its budget by a staggering 12.5% by the year 2021, which translates to £4.2 billion from the operating budget. This is the annual operating budget. It needs to be cut by £4.2 billion. That's just for London Underground, DLR and London Overground, which is called London Rail. But what's important to understand is this current plan that most of you know about only accounts for 6% of the actual cuts that they need to do between now and 2021. So there's going to be a lot of disputes in London as a result of these plans and these cuts. So as soon as they announced the cuts, we balloted straight away. A lot of people thought it was a bit of a we should really keep the powder dry and whatnot, but it was important to send a message that we're balloting. We didn't announce strike dates, and it gave us months to build, go into the workplace, speak to our colleagues, and it's important, as a gentleman said, brother said next to me, to organise around the issues. I think unions need to be more political. We need to shout about being political and not kind of hide it and be ashamed of it. We need to be more upfrontly political. But when organising people, you need to meet people, I believe, at their level. And what's most motivating is how these political things are affecting people directly in their lives. So the starting point for me is to organise through direct issues, but then use them as a gateway to educate. We need to politicise the industrial, and what I mean by that is, as Sam says, it's legal to go on strike because of political issues. But when we have industrial issues, we need to show the link to the political realm. I was lucky enough to go on a political course, RMT political course, and it really directly showed how what happens in Westminster and your local government affects you in your workplace, and with the EU as well. But one of the other things that was really important is, as a direct result of that course, I went back to my region and we kind of made a plan which turned out in creating a coordinated campaigning group called Hands Off London Transport. I've all given you one of these leaflets. What the main crux of it is to build around the common issue. So this issue that affects London Underground workers, affects disabled passengers, affects tourists, affects people who are commuting, affects elderly passengers, people who want to use the ticket office, which is the big seller, but there's going to be staff cuts which affects every single person. So it's about coordinating, getting a coordinating group, which is not, because we have to organise in our workplace industrially, but when we're talking to the public, it's a different, we have to come at it from a different angle. We need to meet them where they are and show how it affects them, and give them a channel to kind of direct their frustration. So that's one of the things I think we should definitely be doing as trade unions, outreach into the community. Also, one other thing quickly that we're doing, I'm not sure many of you know this, but on Saturday the 26th of July, we're going to be doing Listen to London, the Future of London Underground conference. What that is, we we've asked Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London, to do public consultation. The Greater London Authority has asked Boris Johnson to do a public consultation, but he refuses to do a public consultation. So we're going to do our own public consultation, and we want to encourage different community groups to come. Anyone who's interested, tell your friends. And what we find there will be obviously put out to the media, but also put to Mayor's office, because they're kind of treating members of the public with a lot of disdain, and sort of, it doesn't matter what we think. We you know, that kind of ruling class believes that they know what's best for us and they're going to ram it down our throat. And you know, just quickly before I move on, a lot of the success for UKIP is about the disaffection with the political class. It's about, I mean, that has been there for years. And what we need to do is, hopefully, the idea about things like this is it gives a channel for that. Because as far as I can see, the opposition, political opposition, isn't giving them an effective channel. So it's important for trade unions and for other community or social organising groups to just continue to give people a channel for any anti-austerity feelings that they have. Thank you.
Thank you, that's an excellent point to end on as well. So next I'm going to pass you on to Alex Kenny.
All right, thanks very much for inviting me to be on this platform. I think it's a really important discussion that we've got to try and drill deep into what's happening inside the trade union movement at the moment, and what we want to do about it. Some of the work that we're doing in the NUT at the moment, we're looking at what's been happening in America, particularly in teacher unions, particularly in Chicago, and a model they've developed, which I think people have started to talk about here, called social movement trade unionism, which at the moment means a lot of things to a lot of people, but it's where I think a lot of unions are starting to point and starting to think about how we can deepen the work that we're doing. What I want to do in the time I've got is to put a little bit of context onto where I think we're at on the trade union movement, the context we're working in, the period we're coming out of, and you know, try and put some optimism on that, but reflecting the reality of where we are. Because since the miners' strike, we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the miners' strike, which ended in a defeat, followed by the defeat of the printers at Wapping. And what you saw following that was a period of retreat by trade unions, a turn into individual membership, servicing individual members through casework, through offering them bank loans. You know, in the 1990s, I was getting stuff from the NUT, take out this loan, here's a bank that's offering you this, here's a building society offering you this. They didn't, unions turned away from organising in the workplace, from recruiting reps, from building at the base of the union. And in a sense, the message they were giving to members was that we can't win and we have to wait for a Labour government. We have to wait for a Labour government to deliver us. So through the 1990s, that's the kind of union that was building up, that's the kind of member that was being recruited. Then a Labour government came and they didn't deliver. You know, that whole period was a period of savage neoliberal attacks on workers, you know, driving down wages, attacking conditions, and the unions didn't really rise to the challenge to meet that. I think we're beginning to come out of that period. You know, optimistically, I think we're beginning to come out of that period. We are seeing more strike actions start to rise. We're seeing some more set-piece strike actions on a scale that Sam's talked about in 2011 and perhaps on July the 10th. But I think we have to recognise that that is still at historically low levels. Since 1991, there's only been 1 year where more than 1 million strike days have been lost. In 2012, there were fewer strike days lost than at any time during the Second World War. So if you think about strikes in the Second World War perhaps not being that popular, that's a kind of indication of where we're coming out from. But we've seen in 2008 the attempt to break the pay freeze. In 2011, the attempt to take on the government a tax on pensions. And now I think we could be going into a period where there is, you know, industrial action running through the autumn around pay, although we've still got to wait to see what some of the local government unions do when they get their ballots. So I think we are in a period of low-level activity. We are coming out of that and attempting to break through. In the NUT, we have taken more strike action since this government was elected than at any time in our 125-year history. You know, that's a simple fact of where the NUT is trying to position itself at the moment, at the heart of this movement and other unions that are trying to do it. And we are very pleased to be associated with the People's Assembly and working closely with them and committed to building the demonstration. Now, what we've been trying to look at is what some of the models are from Chicago Teachers Union, and I will recommend that if you don't follow some of the websites, the Labour Notes website, LABOR Notes website from America, is a very good tool, resource tool, for how some of this is being done in different unions in America. And in particular, a woman called Dr. Lois Weiner, who's just been over here visiting some teachers here, and we've had meetings with her about this kind of community campaigning. Because what they did in Chicago was, at the end of a big 2-year drive, when they knew they were going to be in dispute with their mayor, they staged an all-out strike that lasted 7 days because their mayor came in. It was against school closures and against changes to contracts. But what they did in the 2 years building up to that was a real drive into the workplace to get workplace organisation going, to get reps, active reps, not reps who just open mail and put up on the notice board. They turned to the community. They said, if we're going to win this strike in 2 years' time, we've got to win it with the community. So they went out and built community campaigns along the lines that the RMT is doing, making their dispute part of the community dispute. So looking at what was affecting the black and Hispanic communities in Chicago and making them an issue for teachers. And we've started to try and do that social model trade unionism in the NUT through our Stand Up for Education campaign, which is separate from, but we are linking very closely to our dispute about pay and conditions, where we're going out to parents, going out to the community to try and build this in a way that is very exciting. We've had over 120 stalls in different places around the country in the last few weeks, some of them jointly with the People's Assembly, some in areas where there's been low level of activity for the union. So people ringing us up saying, where do I get a pasting table? How do I set up a stall? Do I need permission to do it? Now, that's a sign of weakness, but it's also exciting that people want to do it and they want to find out to do it. So we're trying to position the union into a good place where we can take this into the community, where we can deliver support for our strike action. I think things like the Doncaster Care UK, Lambeth UCU, at UCU at Lambeth College are starting an indefinite strike action on Tuesday following the model of Care UK. I'm wrapping up now. I think that shows that people will fight. I think people are ready to fight. I think there's a new layer of young activists coming into unions who've been radicalised by the trade union, by the student protests, coming in, wanting to get involved. And I think all unions have got to look out for them, get them in, get them organised and get them active. I think what we will see is a period of set-piece political strikes, whether it's 1 day, whether it's 2 day. I think we're a long way from the kind of strike action that we saw in the 70s and 80s, where people were going out in order to all-out strikes to win and to break the government or break the employer, other than in small places. But I think we are moving towards that. We have to try and move towards more widespread action. But I think we don't do that. This is my final point, and this is the point I want to throw out. I don't think we do that, as some people try to do, I think, too much, by placing demands on union leaderships. I think we do it by building an organised rank and file in the workplace that can transform thinking and develop confidence in the union. On the March the 26th strike, there was a group who handed out leaflets to 11,000 teachers in London saying 1 day strikes don't work. You've got 11,000 people who are mobilised enough to march through London on a 1 day strike, and you hand them a leaflet saying this strike won't work. Now, we know 1 day strikes don't work. I know 1 day strikes don't work. But you don't tell people that they don't work when they're doing it. You have to have that debate with people about what's necessary. You might as well walk through London saying this strike won't work. 1 day strikes don't work. Why would you do that? The job of activists, the job of rank and file militants like us, is not to just rely on placing demands on the leadership. It's to go into the workplaces, to go into the communities and build vibrant organisations of the kind that are prepared to do the things like Meg and her colleagues in Doncaster are prepared to do, of the kind that are to show the trade unions that people are up for a fight. And I should stop there, shouldn't I?
Thank you. indeed. And we'll now hear from Mags, who's the KUK representative. So.
Hi everybody. Just to talk a bit about our dispute in Doncaster and what's been going on. We previously worked for the NHS until 2013 last year. We lost the tender to KUK, who were owned by Bridgepoint, £1 billion organisation. 2 months into the contract, they decided they were going to cut our pay by 35%, slash our holidays, basically everything, annual leave, sick days, the whole lot. So we all met and we were balloted for strike. It was 98% in favour of strike action. We've had 5 rounds of strike action so far, the last 2 weeks being fantastic, because we were new in the beginning. But now, the last 2 weeks has been absolutely fantastic. We formed a strike committee with some of the strikers. Me and Roger have just been elected shop stewards. We hit Colchester, KUK headquarters. We've been into London and hit Bridgepoint, took a petition to Downing Street. We've had Dave Prentice come on the picket line, offered with national backing to win this dispute. And some of the things that, as regards to what KUK has been doing, they did offer a transnational payment of 14 months. But when we're asked what we're supposed to do after this time, learn to budget, we can't budget anymore. They've also come up and now offered £2,000 pay rises to our managers, yet they're cutting our pay. So, you know, for a company that's saying they can't run the service, they can pay out quite a lot to the managers, giving them the pay rise and then taking off us. So we've stood strong, we've stood firm. I mean, we've had anger, tears, laughter and everything on this picket line. But there's no way we're backing down. We're in it till the end, in it till we win. We're fighting not just for ourselves, we're fighting for our vulnerable service users. Some of them haven't got a voice, but we've got to be their voice, and we're fighting because you're getting people who are coming in, you know, 2 minutes in the job, haven't been CRB checked. Some of them saying they don't do personal care. This is the scab labour that they're bringing in to cover us. And I just think it's time everybody got together, the unions joined together and fought back at this government and all they stand for. And we're not gonna have it anymore. We're not gonna take it anymore. We're all gonna go out on strike. We're gonna withdraw our labour, and we're gonna continue to do that until they back down. Because there's no reason for them to be doing this other than make their bank balances bigger. So, you know, and we're doing it for future generations. What kind of futures our kids, our grandkids got if we don't get up and stand now and fight? And that's what we've been telling people, you know, in years to come. When they say, why am I on minimum wage or why am I on zero contract? Well, because we didn't have the balls to go out and strike and fight for you. Well, damn right we're going to go out on strike and we're going to fight for them. That's what we're all about. So what we're asking, I am nervous because I'm not used to speaking, this is all new for us, but what we're asking in Doncaster is to go and spread the word, you know, get on with us, go back to your workforce, fight, ballot for strike, get back on, get out there, fight, get on with us, and let's win against this government and all they stand for. And, you know, we want the backing of the country, we want the backing of the unions. You know, in it to win it, in it till the end. They're not going to take our money off so they can have better cars, better holidays, which is what it's all about for them, make the rich richer. We're not going to have a working class. I've got a little story. My nephew, he took on his apprenticeship, £2.95 an hour. Yeah. He's not getting a job at the end of that. They're just moving him on and bringing somebody else on for £2.95 an hour. So you've got slave labour there, straight away. And it's just disgusting what's allowed to happen. I mean, they're bringing all these, I was just saying before I come here, they're bringing all these laws in about, you know, that they can bring in what's better for them. But they need to bring a law in and say they're not going to be allowed to make profit off the back of care. Vulnerable people, it should never be allowed, it should be made criminal, that you can make. They're not, they're trying to say they've got to, you know, make these massive cuts, KUK, it's just not true. And I've said that when I've had meetings with them, it's not true. But when we took over, the ones who didn't come over, they'd already made that saving. And they're not going to stop there. They'll come after with our basic next. They want us on minimum wage, and that is the truth of it. They really do want us on minimum wage. So we've stood together, you know, and if they keep coming back and trying to bully, we've had unbelievable amount of meals through the doors and that, bully tactics and that, trying to scare and that. And we just stood strong. We said we're not having it. We're like a family now, us strikers, and we're all there to support each other. But we do need, we're not going to win this on our own, we do need the backing of the country and the unions to win this fight. And that's it, really.
That's amazing and so inspirational to hear about what you guys have been doing in the UK dispute. I hope it's an inspiration to care workers and low-paid and precarious workers who are facing those kind of cuts everywhere. So just finish, we'll have Richard all day to speak, and then we'll be able to take some questions and contributions from the audience.
Thanks a lot, Ellie. Sorry about the interruptions to the speakers. It's a dinosaur in charge of electronics. First of all, I want what Mag said, I think sums up to a very large extent what this meeting is about. A group of workers that initially, not a political thought in their heads, just on a matter of what seemed to them to be a matter of principle and standing up for their rights, has inherently in it a political dimension. So firstly, I would like there to be a queue to see Mags at the end of this meeting asking for details about how you can get through your branches and your workplaces, collections and solidarity, because that in itself is a political act. When you go to your workmates, and there is a check, Mags, from our branch, when you go to your workmates and ask them to dig into their pockets to support another group of workers in another town, in another industry, fighting for something that you can easily argue is right and fair and proper, you are raising a political argument with your workmates. You don't have to tell them it's political, it is political. Secondly, Marx and Engels said many, many years ago that trade unions are the defence organs of the working class. And it's amazing they had full beards at the end of their lives, because they must have been pulling them out every day with the sectional, craft-based, narrow-minded unions that they had to deal with. Marx never had the joy of seeing the explosion of new unionism at the turn of the 19th century, the formation of general unions, when the hitherto unorganisable, the flotsam and jetsam of the London docks, of, as Kate Connolly pointed out earlier on in a meeting this morning, the women in the jam factories and the packing factories and the warehouses, saw that they could collectively organise and take on the exploiters, the sweaters of their labour. It was a massive explosion of working class anger at that time, and it shows the potential. We have that today. Trade unions are, whether we like it or not, political, because we represent the interests of one group of society, working people, in however narrow and sectional a form, against the interests of those who employ us and profit from us. Our job as activists is to enhance that view so that we see the wider class context in which those conflicts take place. Now, June the 10th, the march, and July the 21st, the strike, the other way about, June the 21st and July the 10th, are political manifestations. There's a lot of talk about the need for a general strike, the need for political strikes in this country. When you have teachers and health workers, bus workers, underground workers marching together against austerity, that's a political manifestation, it can't be anything else. When the same groups of workers join in a demonstration, despite the fact that the individual cause that initially got them to go on that demonstration may be sectional, but they are marching with other workers from other industries, that is a political manifestation. And Alex, you put it so superbly in terms of what the job of militants and socialists is. It is not to lecture, it is to listen, to learn, and take those arguments into our workplaces and our work communities. Secondly, when Sam said about austerity, and let's be clear about this, by the way, austerity is just the economic face of the neoliberal agenda. Oh, bugger me. That on the civil liberties side and the military side is the war on terror. It is just naked capital attempting to dominate in its interests. So The trade unions are an essential part, possibly the best organised part of the class, but austerity, that's what I was trying to do, tell me when it's time for me to shut up. Trades unions represent one section of the class. Austerity attacks the whole of our class. We cannot defeat austerity with just one section of the class. We need the class as a whole to move. One very important lever in that is where we're organised in the workplace, where we have economic power. But it's a political struggle at the end of the day. We are not syndicalists. And if we are going to politically change the parameters of debate, we need to involve our class as a whole. That is, when Doncaster care workers go out and when they go onto the streets of Doncaster and they argue with other working class people, do you want your aged parents to be seen purely as a source of profit for some scumbag in Colchester, or do you think that humanity is wider than that? That is a political and a revolutionary argument that they are putting. But they're putting it in terms that their fellow working class people in Doncaster see in reality. So politics is not an abstract up there where we lecture to poor benighted workers why what they're doing is not good enough. Politics is about us relating what we are actually doing to the real life experience of those we work with and those we argue with. And I'll finish very quickly on this and hope I've got enough time. We have a teacher coming to our next branch meeting. I'm a road haulage branch secretary. Why the pox have we got a teacher coming to a road haulage branch meeting? It's because at our last branch meeting, when we were having a discussion about how we could take forward low wages in our industry, one driver said something about the teachers going out on strike and was very, very critical. Why are they only going out for one day? That's not going to change anything. What we need to do is all go out. And I said, all right, we will get a teacher at our next branch meeting. She will explain why they're doing what they're doing, why she thinks it needs to go further, and what she wants you to do, Bill, to try and make sure that we get that generality. So that is, if you like, how you build for the demonstration in June and the strike in July. And thank you very much indeed, Mags, for coming here and showing us how it works in practice.
You know, we've got a little bit of time for questions. I will be keeping people's contributions down to 2 minutes maximum from the audience, so I'm sure you can. So we are running a little bit over time, and what I'm going to ask people to do on the panel is if you can just take maybe one question that you wanted to respond to, rather than trying to respond to everything that everybody said, because we clearly won't have enough time to do that. And then if people do want to ask any more questions, we are going into the lunch hour. And I'm sure people will be happy to talk to anybody one-on-one that wanted to ask anything else or to discuss anything else. Hope I'm not speaking out of turn for any of you. Right, good. All right, so if we just go around this way, and like I say, just take one thing that you want to respond to.
No, I mean I don't have a huge amount to add. I think lots of things have been covered. I think it's been a very good discussion. But the point is, we all want to see more action. We all want to see an escalation of workplace action. We all want to see all of these kind of things. But as a socialist, as a revolutionary, as a militant in your workplace, in your union, what you need to think, what is the next step to achieving that? And that is the concrete thing. You can stand on the sidelines and shout at trade union leadership all you want, but what is the next step that's going to bring you concretely towards a situation that can lead to more action? And in my opinion, that's linking up the ununionised workers, the precarious workers, with your trade union, with your workplace. It's rebuilding the trade unions in that way. And at the moment, the best shot that we've got at that is the People's Assembly. And that means that we need to build the demonstration on the 21st of June as big as possible.
I think us, the Care UK strikers, has proved that it can be done. As regards to the unions, I've said from day one that the unions should join forces in getting these working class out on strike for better conditions, paying conditions. And what I forgot to mention when I was speaking before as well, we've just had another offer put on the table to us, which basically was rejected. It's just a joke. But you know, you can't make a difference. It definitely rattled. You know, let's see what comes out next. We hope we win this dispute.
I'm gonna be a bit cheeky and try to merge two halves as one. The elephant in the room, the Labour Party. For me personally, I think the Labour Party the Labour Party that was started is extremely different to the Labour Party that existed at this time. The whole point of the Labour Party, including the name, is to represent Labour. And I believe that the whole political class is representing capital, and that arena of Westminster, capital has a lot of influence over it. Me personally, I believe, I'm not speaking for the RMT now, but there's a debate going on, do you want to be inside the Labour Party changing it or outside? Me personally, I believe that, from what I hear, is within it, there's not enough democracy. We can put pressure on it. But for me, I'd like to see resources taken out, away from the Labour Party. Things like People's Assembly, which have a much more grassroots base, need to be invested in time, energy, resources, knowledge, and it kind of crosses over to what should graduates do. Graduates need, as the lady over there asked, join the union, number one, be an activist, be an organiser, be political. What I mean by that, being an activist, it's not, there are different positions in unions, but for me personally, it's just about I'm an activist. I think it was Che who said that a true revolutionary goes wherever they're needed. So you're going to see what's needed, and you have to try and fill those gaps. You've got to box smart as well. Sometimes you're not always that. I can't always be that guy that's always just the RMT guy. I need to be able to, if I'm going to have effective relationships and influence with my colleagues, they need to be able to relate to me. And stay educated as well. We've got so many different types of education. We've got the kind of institutes that we have, but we have trade union focused education, and that's missing from schools. So quickly into the last bit is young people as well. Focus on young people if you graduate, and try and build their class consciousness and remind them of the class conflict they're in.
Without being too pessimistic, I just wanted to address a couple of things. Yesterday was in Turkey, Gezi uprising's anniversary, and I just want to highlight a couple of things in relation to that uprising. Over 3 million people, they were on the streets of Turkey, not just in Istanbul, and they clashed over 30 days with the police every night. Okay, and that experience was quite valuable, but hasn't achieved much. The reason it hasn't achieved much because organized labor did not come out on the streets. So we need to be realistic. Without organized labor, it doesn't matter how big the movement that we built, we're not going to achieve much. So going back to the point of that John was talking about, when we look at the membership levels, they are low. When you look at it, and the only way we will be able to push those membership levels are everyday practices showing that organizing these workers on their everyday issue. And without that, if you go to them with abstract concepts, that they can't relate to, they're not gonna come on board. We're not gonna be able to recruit them. We're not gonna be able to build their confidence. Now, I want to highlight another issue with regards to one day strike versus having a strategy. If you look at it, if without having a clear strategy to win, whatever dispute that we are taking on, whatever we are doing in relation, if you don't have a clear strategy which is escalating, starting from basic things, we're not going to achieve anything. We'll do one-day strikes or we'll go out marching. Yeah, it's good experience, build some collective power, but people will go home and they will think, okay, what did we achieve? We marched, etc. So I just wanted to highlight that has to be linked organized labor. We need to link it to organized labor, whatever we do, and we need to push that.
Before I make the point, I would just like to refer to something that Alex said earlier about the low level of strikes in this country since World War II. Last year, fewer strike days than in the Second World War in this country. However, our class is international. If you look at the explosion that is taking place in China at the moment, the class is not dead. And just as the gas workers in Beckton, at the turn of the 19th century, organised the unorganisable, and it went right across the class. What happens in one section of our class has a knock-on effect, so there's an upside as well as a downside. But lecturing, and I really hope that comrades that have got their hackles raised will take this seriously. This is not point scoring. I'm the senior steward at my roadways depot, and I'm the branch secretary of our union branch. When I started at roadways, we had a venal, corrupt senior steward. I did not get elected as senior steward by continually going around criticising and carping about what that scumbag was doing. I won the trust and confidence of my fellow drivers by being positive all the time and putting forward constructive things in ways in which we could be better organised. And in the end, his supporters decided he was not up to the job. Now, that is the point, and I think it's the point that Alex was making. We all know in this room that a one-day strike, a one-day general strike, a one-week general strike is not going to change the economic system of the world, and yet we still enthusiastically support the idea. Why? If all we're going to do is criticise that what we're doing now is not good enough, there is no point in doing it. So I'd really like to emphasise what Kate Connolly said in answer to your question, sister, about what do you do as a new worker entering the workplace. Tap in to your workmates, find out what hacks them off. Never ever sit back and allow a racist or sexist or divisive comment to go unchallenged. Earn the respect of your workmates for the fact that whether they agree with you or not, you stand by your principles and they can trust you. And sooner or later that will pay off, because when they're up against the governor and they're looking for somebody solid to rely on, it won't be the scumbag brown nose who goes around backstabbing all the time. It will be the people who they might not like, but they respect. And as an essential part of that, all of us have a duty when we see sections of our class moving into action, whether that is a demonstration such as on June the 10th against austerity, or sections of our class taking industrial action on, oh, it's the wrong dates again, Sam put that right, June the 21st, or the strike action on July the 10th, we have a moral obligation to build those and build the confidence in supporting those, not point out where they're wrong and why they're not good enough.
Well, nothing more to say after that. Thank you very much to our